Okay, so then we have interaction of selection and treatment, which is the confidence that the study's findings can be generalizable to other learner groups. This, uh, I mean, would all students of the same age and nationality learn English at the same pace, regardless of whether study? Of course not. It can be completely different for learners in the same classroom. So, what would be the way to fix this? According to the reading, it says to replicate the study, which in this case you might find different results that were previously unknown. Next, we have the reactive or interactive effects of testing, which means that sensitizing participants beyond the cognitive status of non-research or ordinary students via pretesting. So students may work extra hard to meet researchers' expectations or pay a disproportional amount of attention to a post-test. This is a threat to validity because it is no longer clear whether the improvement comes from the treatment or from their own experiences in the study. So a way to fix this would be to use a more sophisticated experimental design. This provides researchers with a wider spectrum of interactions to observe. Next area that we're going to talk about is the ecological validity and natural experiment. This is often seen as part of experimental validity. It focuses on the applicability of findings from laboratory experiments onto real life. One of the main issues is the vantage point of participants, which means that control settings are not the same as real classrooms. This could be the number of students, the seating arrangements, etc. So how do we fix this? Um, it would be that the researchers have little control over variables leading to naturally occurring findings. Finding participants that have already encountered a treatment of interest rather than being introduced by it to it by after the sampling procedure. And next, criticism concerning internal validity will almost always be associated with a natural experiment because it is difficult to obtain findings that are both natural and internally valid. That is all I have to share with you. So let's go to the next part.
Okay, so what we need to consider if we talk about embedded experimental design. So there are some actions that we need to consider. The first one is that we don't have the complete picture of what is happening in the connection between the treatment and the outcome when we are using experimental design. So the best way to alleviate this is integrating qualitative research elements. In this way, we have that when an experimental research is conducted, there is a lack of quantitative description of the phenomenon being examined. So it is required a more detailed or substantive knowledge of the contents and workings. This knowledge cannot be clearly obtained by using a randomized experiment. Then we have that the experimental design and the RTCs can be greatly enhanced when we integrate the quality research elements. When we do this, the quality research elements that we can integrate here in the experimental design and the RCTs can be really help by this action. So we have that RCTs in education are not feasible, particularly on an individual level. For example, if we have randomly assigned each individual student to either an experimental condition or the control condition, it is very unlikely that we have in the sample classes or schools, we can have a compatible items, so they are not the same in size, or they don't have the same qualifications of the teachers or the portion of the gender, for example. So these differences will reduce validity. Implementing qualitative elements would help to understand and have data of these differences. Also, when we add qualitative research elements, the experiment can continue, the experiment can continue taking the lead of what is the experimental research, but we are going to have also this collection and the analysis of the qualitative data. And this could take place before, during, or after the experiment implemented. So next, we have like the benefits of integrating these qualitative research elements. This action can offer, if we go to the next one, the first, we have the development outcome measures and intervention. That means that if we conduct a pilot study using qualitative instruments, for example, the interviews, we are going to have more detailed information about what is happening with the participants that we have. So we can have or we can take some interviews with people that has a similar profile than the prospective participants that we are using in the study. And we can ask them some questions related to the difficulty and the content of the test, or what they are being asked. Also, we can describe the participants' experiences with the intervention. So in here, we can conduct a more depth interviews with those participants in the experiment. This is recommended to do it after the competition of the experiment, because we can have here, if we do it like before we conduct the study, or during the study, the students could be, or the participants could be aware of what is happening, and we can have what is called the Hawthorne effect. So according to Stephen Jones, this effect refers to the way that the subjects in a research may respond to this action of being observed. So according to this author, in the years 1924 through 1933, there was a study conducted in the Western Electric Hawthorne plant in Illinois, in the United States. And here the researchers were studying the effects of the lights on workers' productivity. They were kind of finding if the intensity of the light was a factor of the increase of the work. So at the beginning, what they did is that they increased the lightings, and they observed that the work productivity was increased. Then tried to do the opposite. So they reversed the treatment and they lowered these lights, but they continue observing the increase of the productivity. So at the end, they concluded that the increasing of the workers' productivity was not due to the different light intensity, but because they were observed by the researchers, and that's what produced this increase of productivity. Also, we have here the stimulated recall methodology that is also used to describe the participants' activities which consist setting to the students or giving to the students a video where they were recorded doing a task. In that way, they are internalizing the process that they were following during this activity. Then we have the way to describe the process and treatment fidelity. Here, the author suggests that if we are using observation in the experiment, is going to help us to have a better understanding if whether if the treatment has been accurate or has been authentic. So that's another way that we can improve this process of experimental design. We have described what long-term effects are experienced. In here, what is important to take into consideration is to analyze if the intervention of the experiment has an effect in the participants. The idea is that this effect is taking or is longer for the participants. The idea is that the benefit is not only during the experiment, but it could function as a later benefit for them. So can we go to the next slide, please? So then we can find some challenges about putting this experimental design along with some qualitative elements of the research elements. What are these challenges? Well, first of all, the researchers must have experience related to what is quantitative and qualitative design. And also they need to understand what is the methodology of both researchers types. And that means that, for example, most of the times we can find researchers that incline themselves to one side or to the another, or they are quantitative researchers or they are qualitative researchers. So in order to have both of what we can call both of the what is the best of the both worlds is that they can work in teams. And in this way, they can use the different orientations and work in team. Of course, they might be a benefit or it could be an obstacle for them. So can we go to the next slide? To conclude this, we can put all the information in these 6 statements. The first one, we can say that the experimental design is used to assess the effects of new teaching innovations. So that's one of the goals that we use this type of research. The RCTs are significant vehicles to ensure that the independent variable affects the dependent variable. That's a very good method that we can use when we are talking about dependent and independent variable. But these RCTs are not feasible in several situations, especially when we are talking about classroom context or classroom research. Then there are some threats affecting validity that Elisa was mentioned, and the researchers should remain attentive to cope with this because validity is one important aspect that we need to consider in researching. Integrating qualitative elements compensates the shortcomings of the experimental designs, but of course we need to be careful on the challenges that they may imply for researchers. So integrating quantitative and qualitative, or when we have quantitative and qualitative oriented researchers working together, would be beneficial, and we can use this team approach. So what do you guys think? Are you up to use experimental design? Well, it's up to you guys. This is what we are covering today about the experimental research. I hope that you could have a better idea, or we could help you to understand this method of this protocol of researching. Thank you so much for your attention. Here we have some of the references, and we see you in the class next time. Thank you very much.